Tell me what you see when you look at me. Do you see another brother lost in these streets looking for his soul?
Trying to find my soul.
Or do you see another brother searching for lost souls in these streets? A street soldier.
Street soldier.
Here to help you get that chip off your shoulder, warm your colder days and sober your drunken ways, and find a way to help you get over these hurdles placed in our path. And this is not meant to amuse you. This is for all those who have questions but are afraid to ask.
I won't be afraid. I won't be afraid. No. When times get hard, you lose your way. Open your mind and hear what I say.
This is a message for the hard and the soft. To those who tune in weekly and to those who keep an eye out for 8 p.m. on Sundays and turn their radios off. The truth hurts. The cloth has been pulled. We're walking around half dead. Use this show as your IV. Alive and free is a new movement. We've achieved self-destruction. A street soldier promotes self-improvement.
Streets couldn't be no colder, so I gotta be a soldier. It shouldn't be this hard for me. Even when it seems so hopeless, I gotta keep my focus. I'm glad to be alive and free, yeah. Streets couldn't be no colder, so I gotta be a soldier. It shouldn't be this hard for me. Even when it seems so hopeless, I gotta keep my focus. I'm glad to be alive and free, yeah.
We had a guest last week that we're bringing back this week because the Restore Our Rights conference that we talked about last week, panel discussion and strategy session about formerly incarcerated getting the right to vote. We had a great discussion about that last week on the air. The conference actually happened. The panel discussion and conversation actually happened on Thursday. It was January 17, 2000, past Thursday at Booth Auditorium at UC Berkeley School of Law. And I wanted to get an update on how that went. This is certainly as important, Alive and Free is the name of the show. This is about freedom. This is about restoring your right to vote. And so I asked Amina Elster, who is I wrote it down, Amina, Family Unity Coordinator at All of Us and None, to come on for a few minutes. She was gracious. She's gracious to do that and tell us how things went. Amina, I know you had to listen to that whole discussion about celebrities. Brianna's in heaven, and yes, probably, yeah. What can I say?
As she should be.
As she should be, and Pastor Grace, I need absolution, so come on, do something with me, babe. Okay, but let's get an update on the panel discussion on Restore Our Rights from last Thursday. How do you feel that it went? Go ahead. You just go ahead. Just tell us how it is.
Okay, yes. So the Restore Our Rights panel discussion on January 17th, it went well. There was a huge turnout, a blend of folks from the legal community, from grassroots organizations, from community members, and folks impacted by not being able to vote due to felonies. So there was some great discussions around questions involving whether or not there were legitimate public safety concerns when it came to enfranchising folks with with prior felony convictions, and the truth is that it's not. Also around incremental change, because oftentimes when we're dealing with legislation involving incarceration or folks incarcerated, they're often pitting nonviolent or violent folks against one another. Yeah. So a lot of times there are more bills or laws that pass that exclude a lot of folks. So the importance of incremental change, especially when it comes to strategy, and the strategy around voting is to, hey, if we enfranchise this whole group of nonviolent folks, then that we have that much more of an army when it comes to going to the polls to enfranchise those with violent violent convictions.
For those people who didn't listen last week, why don't you say, as best you can, what the Restore Our Rights movement is all about? I mean, it speaks for itself. The word speaks for itself. But just give folks a, explanation of what's all about.
Definitely. So, for folks who have been to prison or have a felony conviction, they are not allowed to vote if they are on felony parole, state parole, or if they are on federal probation. However, if folks are on state probation or housed in a county jail, they are still allowed to vote. So what we're trying to do is get state parolees who are currently on parole the right to vote so that they can actively participate in our democracy.
And one of the things that you made clear last week is that this is a state-by-state effort. And so the recent victory, I'll say a victory in Florida for the movement is sort of I guess, I don't want to call it the poster child, but that's what, you really like to see. I saw that one of the panelists, Desmond Meade, was from the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. Did he talk a little bit about how that all came about? Because that must have taken a ton of organizing to pull that off. I mean,
glad you brought that. Yeah, glad you brought that up. So yes, Desmond Meade and Norris Henderson, both of their campaigns, the unanimous jury verdict and the restoration of folks in Florida to be able to vote. It was a huge campaign, but they came up with they managed to do it with a whole new strategy, which incorporates data. So they use a system called the Voter Activation Network, and that system has a lot of census data, voter data, so that they knew exactly who they wanted to target, to go out there and start organizing around to rally, in order to rally up and get them down to the polls. And that was it just brought a whole new spin to your common grassroots organizers going door knocking. They were able to reach thousands of folks through text messaging and robocalling, but also still incorporating that grassroots door knocking in order to establish the connection with folks. And that's why he was so successful. And I thought that's brilliant. We are in an age now where folks would rather text and email, and a lot of our communication is through social media. Yeah. So what better way to strategize and go around and organize folks and to incorporate the use of data.
Did he talk about how long that took? I mean, the goal was to get to the point at that day, that election at the ballot box. But do you have a sense it was a 2-year effort, a 3-year effort? I imagine it
5.
And it's so perfect because what is the Dr. King thing is eyes on the prize, eyes on the
exactly.
prize. And that was the civil rights movement. This is the Restore Our Rights movement. And I'm a big believer in movements, but movements take time, dedication, effort, and you really do have to keep, your eyes on the prize. And in this case, the prize is, restoring the rights to vote, the enfranchised rights for the vote for those who have been formerly incarcerated. And so I'm really proud of them. I mean, because people always say you can't do it. There's nothing that can be done. You can't beat the political system. You can't do that. And they did it.
They did it.
They did it.
Yeah, they did it.
Wow.
Yes.
And it's a number. How was it? 7? What was the number of people that they were able to return the right to vote to? It was some astounding number.
1.4 million people.
Wow. Look at that. That's,
yes.
Man, Dr. King would love that. I got to say that. He would love that, man. He would. He would. He's an organizer. That's what he did. And so, again, there's a lot of people out there who just think nothing can be done. And this is a population that people, forget, want to forget, is the least of these for a lot of folks, Why should they get the vote anyway? You know what I'm saying? And I just think it's just remarkable. And you told us a little about your story. We look forward to the day in California when you know.
Right.
Yeah.
But I can go cast a ballot. Yes.
So this is personal, for
Yes.
for you. Oh, this is.
Yes.
What's the next step for the organizing group in California after this conference?
So yes, the next step is to by the end of this week we should have a assembly bill. And we're going to work its way through legislation, but with that will come a whole lot of organizing around this issue. And the main portion is rallying the folks whose families are impacted by felony disenfranchisement, which was a huge portion of how Florida was able to get it passed, because they went into the communities that, white organizers don't go into, or a lot of folks think that, they're not going to vote anyway. And when, hey, this is your issue. And a lot of folks don't know that this is an issue. So education, we have to educate our community members and let them know, hey, this is what's happening. Because, the truth is, when folks are getting arrested or before they think about doing a crime, they are not thinking about, if I do this, I'm going to lose my right to vote or sit on a jury.
Right.
So we have to educate folks. We have to be able to move them and move our legislator.
Celebrating the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and certainly that song says it all. What a beautiful anthem to Martin Luther King. Stevie, my man, the wonder. We got all kinds of things going on in the studio tonight. I mean, we got, so before we go to I'm going to ask our phone guests just to hold on one second. People just walking in here, and on a night, let's put it on a night where we've had celebrity sightings. We've had Meryl Dandridge from Pastor Grace Greenleaf, and you saw Idris Elba playing. But that's nothing compared to who just walked in the studio. Our own KMEL's own.
And I have an entrance for him, so go ahead and enter that way.
Star of the show,
please.
Power at its best is love, implementing demands of justice.
All right, for Martin Luther King. D.C., it's so wonderful to see you.
D.C.,
what's
what's up, man? Oh, man.
Not often I get to come in here and just, have a family reunion with my folks on a Sunday night, because I got to be here at 5 in the morning on Monday. So I never really get the opportunity to do it. But I was just coming in. We did the Sana G Morning Show on Friday from Las Vegas. So I was just flying back in. That's why I'm a little raspy right now today. And I was like, man, let me run upstairs and go holler at everybody.
Oh, man, it's great to see you, man. So man, you man, look, what can we say? How many years did you sit in that chair over there?
I don't know, 6, 7, something like that.
Oh, man.
It's going on. I think this is going on my 15th year being in the building.
Okay, yeah. So
it definitely was a significant amount of time.
Yeah. You do a great job, man. Really.
Thanks.
And more important, I would say you are, a wonderful human being.
Oh, I appreciate that.
That means I don't care about all the stuff.
I learned from some really great folks around here. You know what I mean? Lady E, Doc, y'all definitely gave me a lot of game to move throughout life with.
It just every time we see you, we're like, man, because we saw you when your car is turning, you kept moving up, and and now you got the monitor. Tell her.
Oh, okay. So
just tell everybody what you do.
Well, if you don't know, I on the Sana G Morning Show here from 6 a.m. until 10 a.m. Monday through Friday, and then I also host a midday show here on KMEL from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. every day too. So 8 hours a day, you're getting your guy, and then weekends, the Damn It's Late Show with DJ Amen and DJ D Sharp. That comes on from 2 a.m. until 4 a.m. Saturday morning, so y'all can tune into that too. It's a lot of fun.
And you do a lot of stuff. And I know you've done a lot of speaking engagements. You do a lot of community stuff too.
The past couple of weeks has been crazy,
yeah,
Doc. I got to DJ Steph Curry's sneaker launch over at the Fox Theater, and then immediately the next week after that, hosted the mayor's inaugural gala after party at the Fox Theater as well. So that a lot, but it's good. It's good.
Well, you get that because of your reputation, because of your name, the work that you do, the type of parent, the character you have. That's how you get all that stuff, man. And so
your gift makes room for you.
Yeah,
that's real.
Ooh.
That's real.
Ooh. That's a Lady Estelle. That wasn't Dr. King. That was Lady Estelle, folks.
But again though, I give you all a lot of credit in having conversations with folks about my journey here at the radio station. I mean, a lot of it was just coming in here and really powwowing and being a part of the show and trying to bring a little bit of something to the table and something that y'all had running before I got here and is running after I've gotten here. So I just wanted to help out and just put my piece in while I was here and I mean.
Good to see you, man.
DC, you wrote this super beautiful piece, like, I don't know, a couple months ago, where you thanked everybody who has ever taught you anything. And it was just beautiful that he named everybody. He named you Dr. Marshall. He named street soldiers. I mean, just to be thankful and humble. Thank you.
I mean, you gotta have that.
Yeah.
You gotta have that. Like, you really have to me, like, nobody gets anywhere alone.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, you're right. Well,
people will say they did.
Absolutely.
Oh, I did that. This is all on me.
Yeah.
But in reality, nah.
And that's what the whole Dr. King thing is about. He did all those folks did everything so that we could have the opportunities to do what we do.
Absolutely.
That's why this holiday is just, I mean, the more you know, the more you owe is the way we say it. And just good to see your success, man. Keep it up, man.
Got to put this out here just because, I got to bring this back. I don't know if y'all said it or not, but just remember, if you got a little PTO tomorrow, it's a day on, not a day off. All right,
man.
Hey, just saying.
I know you got to run, man. One love. Thanks for coming by.
No, thank y'all.
Yeah, man.
This is
great.
Come on.
Heavy-handed. Oh, God, that hurt.
Yeah, I know. What can I say? Woo!
Definitely a special treat.
Oh, man. I get some rest, man.
I love y'all. I'm off in the morning, but I do got to be here at 10 a.m. tomorrow, so I'm about to go eat and then knock out.
All right.
Have a great night, though.
Happy Martin Luther King Day, brother.
Be safe.
Love you, man. Oh, wow. That was a treat. That was a treat. That was a treat. That was a treat. And that leads us into our next guest, who has been patiently waiting on the line. And wow, man, that was unexpected. But you are going to now hear from Dr. Clarence B. Jones. Dr. Clarence Jones is currently scholar and writer in residence, visiting professor at Martin Luther King Jr. Research and Education Institute at Stanford and at the College of Arts and Sciences at the University of San Francisco. In a distinguished and heralded career, Clarence B. Jones served as speechwriter and counsel to Martin Luther King Jr. from 1960 to 1968. And if I keep reading this, there's going to be so much in here, but let me just read this part. Through his work in the civil rights movement, Dr. Jones has dramatically impacted the course of American history. He coordinated the legal defense of Dr. Martin Luther King and other leaders of the SCLC against the libel suits filed against them by the police commissioner and other city officials of Birmingham, Alabama. There's a whole bunch of other stuff. In 1963, he drafted a settlement agreement between the city of Birmingham and Martin Luther King to bring about an end. Wow. Drafted. See, lawyers can do that. To the end of demonstrations and the desegregation of department stores and public accommodations. In August of 1963, he assisted Dr. King in the drafting of his celebrated I Have a Dream speech that he delivered at the March on Washington. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff. He's the author of the book, What Would Martin Say?, which I have read, you should read, and Behind the Dream, the making of the speech that transformed a nation, and also an ebook, Uprising, Understanding Attica, Revolution, and the Incarceration State. And he is currently working on his memoirs entitled Memoirs of a Winter Time soldier, the man who smuggled, I'll say, the letter from the Birmingham jail out of the Birmingham jail, given to him by Martin Luther King Jr. himself. Oh, yes. Mr. Dr. Clarence B. Jones, welcome once again to the show. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Hello, I can.
You can't hear us?
You okay?
Yeah, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you now, yes.
Oh, thank you, Clarence. What can I say? Thank you for coming on to the show, man. Wow.
Listen, the most important thing, Joe, is that as you know and your guests know, is that this is the 90th birthday of Martin Luther King Jr. Had he lived, he would have been 90.
Wow.
And the challenge we all face as we celebrate his birthday is to be sure that we don't get caught up in what I call the marketing of the sanitized Martin Luther King Jr.
Right.
Yeah. Like he's some marketing holiday. I don't know.
Right.
Object.
Right. Yeah, I understand.
So let me just say a couple of things within the limited time that we have. I want to cut to the core of my beloved brother, Martin Luther King Jr. He cared about the least of these. When he and several other ministers in 1959 formed the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, a conference of ministers of various churches in the South. Their purpose of coming together was to redeem the soul of America. That was their purpose, to redeem the soul of America. And for the next several years, until he was assassinated, that's what he sought to do, to redeem the soul of America. And it is incumbent, it's important that those of us who've been blessed, in my case, with longevity. He was 2 years older than me. Just 8th of this month, I just celebrated my 88th birthday.
Oh, Clarence.
So
ahead, brother.
I count the days. I look at the actuarial tables very carefully. You understand?
Yes, sir.
And I thank the Lord
Yes,
that
sir.
I've been blessed to have this longevity.
Yes, sir.
But there's no sense having longevity if you're just going to be wasting the time. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, absolutely.
Longevity without a meaning and a purpose. You might as well live to 8 years old or 18 years old. You know what I'm saying? Or 48, 68.
Yeah.
So when we celebrate this extraordinary individual, what he sought to do on the 39 years that he was on this earth was to do what he said he was trying to do, to redeem the soul of America. And the tripod of his efforts of who he was against violence, concerns about racism and poverty, particularly the least of these. Now, I think, as I was in San Francisco earlier this day. In fact, this morning I had a chance to go to the Glide Memorial Church, and there was a sister from Oakland, the guest preacher, Letitia Thompson. Can't even. I must be tired. Who was the guest pastor? Because Letitia's going to kill me. I can't think of her last name all of a sudden. But also, Reverend Cecil Williams Church, and they had a service of what I call the Church of What's Happening Now. The way they honored Dr. King, but they also talk about some serious things. They talked about the reality what's going on in our own, in Oakland and San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
How is it possible in the richest country in the world, as I was going up the Glide Memorial, was raining, and I'm seeing people hovering in the rain, homeless people, in shelters trying to get out of the rain. So you tell me, how is it possible in the richest nations of the world that we have people who don't have a place to live and can't get enough to eat? And those of us in the African American community, young or old or whatever responsibility we may have, we've got to deal with the reality of what's happening to our children.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yes, sir.
We got to have what Martin would call a come to Jesus moment. You know? Got to ask ourselves, how many African American children are graduating from high schools?
Mm-hmm.
How many?
Not enough.
Graduating from high schools.
Not enough.
Probably about 40%.
Yeah.
Now we're only 12% of the population. So how do we get to be 25% of the prison population?
Yeah.
25 to 30% of the prison population. Yeah. We have to. It's time to have a come to Jesus meeting about this system in this country.
You know, Clarence, I remember when we met, and it was just great. We've known each other, almost maybe 10 years now.
Yeah.
And I remember just maybe the greatest compliment I've ever had. Forget the awards. Is you told me, you said Joe Marshall, Dr. King would love what you do. And
without question. Without question. He would have. Joe, you were a king disciple before you even knew you were a king disciple. You were working on his legacy, even though he may not have known you, because you cared about the least of these and our children. Okay, there's something in a younger and a middle age and an older Joe, an older you, brother, that couldn't turn your back, couldn't see young people when the police called you. You say you got a 13, 11-year-old child here, and you asked them whether the police said they called the child's home. The child said, "Don't bring him here. Don't bring him back here."
And I want y'all to say, I'm not trying to make this about me, but what I'm going to... No, but what I'm trying to say...
No. I'm trying to make it about you because I'm using you as an exemplar.
And
as an example of what the best of Martin King would want.
And that's my point. My point is, kids always ask young people, why you like it? Because I was inspired. You get inspired by people like King. You get inspired by people like that. You understand. The more you know, the more you owe, and that's all it is. And it's your time to do what somebody like what you and Andrew and that whole movement did. And that the work still has to be done. And I made a comment earlier that every time has its movement and every movement has its movers. Right. And you have to be ready to take the baton, because if you don't take the baton, then it's almost like...
But we also, those of us who are blessed with longevity and those of us who are younger like you, Joe, we have to also speak candidly. We got to deal something with this gun violence. We got to deal something with the inferior education system. Yeah. I don't want to. It's getting to the prison, to the pipeline. The schools drop out. Yeah. To the prison. It costs about $135,000 to keep a person in prison in California, right? I think we did $135,000 a year. Okay. I think what you could do in just investing $135,000 in a young person, each young person in a year.
Yeah.
Think about that.
You know, right before you came on, there is a movement, and I love the word movement because movements, you know, or really what make things happen, a Restore Our Rights movement to the formerly incarcerated, you know, to get their voting rights back, which I always thought was crazy because if you serve your time, you should get the right. But that group, they had a huge victory in Florida. They're trying to do something about the voting count. They're totally inspired by what you guys did. They're totally inspired. And in fact, just watching Dr. King, you know, watching Eyes on the Prize, watching the Freedom Riders, watching you, you know, going in there and handling it, they feel like it's a legacy that you've established that we can't let people forget. And that's the thing. People, that's why it's so important this holiday and you coming on, you being here, and you've been everywhere. You've been, God. You've been
thank you,
all
Joe, but I
over everywhere.
You touch on things like voting. Voting's about, you know, we want to change the condition of African Americans. I'm not saying that I am not concerned about the condition of Asian persons, the condition of Native Americans. No, I'm just saying the constituency that I know best.
Yeah.
Okay? It doesn't mean I don't care about other persons. But the constituencies that I know best, that I've seen. I've been in the North, but I've walked the roads in the South. I've seen what our country has tried to do to our people.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And it makes... And so when I say, how can it be in 2019 is that we're having still so many young black men in prison? Now, I make some people upset when I say what I am going to say. Okay.
Well,
now,
I just got
to be some other way. Part of the problem is this dealing with police force, okay?
Yeah.
Part of the problem is that we have to find a way in which we have police. We need police. But why is it that in the case of African Americans, the use of lethal force is the first option that is chosen in effecting an arrest, which possibly could have been an otherwise lawful arrest?
Right. Yeah.
Why is killing a person first before you can see whether you can arrest them by any other means?
All right, we are back. Alive and Free Radio Street Soldiers. We are celebrating the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who we just were told would be 90 years young had he still been alive this year. Our guest is, Dr. Clarence B. Jones. I'm going to read all this, but let me just say speechwriter and lawyer to Martin Luther King Jr., authentic.
Political advisor, you got all that.
I got all that. But this is for the audience. You know I ain't got to do that, brother. Look, man, author of 2 books. Because people should read the books.
Oh, you don't need to go all that.
What would Martin say, Behind the Dream?
It was valuable time on his birthday, man. It's valuable time. But first of all, just to update, if anybody needs to be in touch with me, I'm at the University of San Francisco.
Yep.
I'm in the last few months of 2018, I created with the help and assistance of several other people, the board of directors and so forth, the Gandhi King Institute for Nonviolence and Social Justice. And it is located at the University of San Francisco.
Yep.
So it's a constituent part of the University of San Francisco. Anybody wants to get in touch with me about the Institute or at the Institute, you just call the University of San Francisco and they'll put you in touch with me or with the persons who are, managing the Institute. In any event, Joe, you asked me about my early days with Dr. King.
Yes, that story I read was just so wonderful.
All right.
How you first
I'll try to do it as briefly as possible. In 1960, I was 29 years old. Dr. King was 31 years old. In February 1960, he had been indicted by the state of Alabama for tax evasion. and Persia relying on his state income tax return. And he was represented by a superb group of lawyers. His chief counsel was an African-American judge in New York by the name of Hubert Delaney, and he had two other tax lawyers from Chicago, Robert Ming and Robert Layton. Both were, one was the lawyer for the state of Illinois, IRS, and state, they were tax specialists. And then at that time, a young lawyer in Alabama by the name of Fred Gray, who since became famous and eventually a judge in the state of Alabama Supreme Court. So Judge Delaney called me on a Thursday evening. He says, Clarence, that Negro preacher in Alabama? Well, I'm his chief counsel. I'm his chief defense counsel, and I'm calling you because I need you to go and coordinate the preparation of the research for the legal defense. Now, the problem is, although I'd recently 7.5 or 6.5 months earlier graduated from Boston University Law School, I was in California starting a law practice in entertainment law and copyright, musical copyright infringement, all that stuff. So when he first called me, I thought he was talking about, going to the law library locally. And then he said, no, you got to go to Alabama. That's where I need you. I need you to go down and do all the coordinate. And I said, Judge, I love you, I respect you, but I simply can't do that. Well, he was crestfallen. And so that was on a Thursday night. Early the next day, Friday morning, the phone call again. This time it was Judge Delaney, Hubert Delaney. He says, Clarence, at the time of our conversation last night, I did not know that Dr. King has a speaking engagement in Los Angeles. And he's in the air right now. He's on the plane. And I told him to take advantage and to change the time, that the first thing he should do when he lands in Los Angeles is to call you and arrange to come out and see you. And I thought to myself, I said, oh, no, I'd already told the judge I couldn't do it. And you got to understand that in 1960, Dr. King had already been on the cover of Life, Look at Time magazine. But that wasn't my thing. So anyway, fast forward, Friday night, I was living in Altadena, California, right, a suburb of Los Angeles. Friday night, my doorbell rings, and there's Martin Luther King Jr. there with a colleague of his, Bernard Lee. And he comes into my home, and he says, Attorney Jones, I was just starting out as a lawyer. He says, Judge Delaney's told me so much about you, and blah, blah, blah. And we sat down at my wife at the time, she's now deceased. We had this nice home in Altadena, California. He came and sat right down and was very direct. He says, Mr. Jones, we have lots of young white lawyers helping us from the Northeast and the Midwest. He said, but what we need are young Negro lawyers like you to help us in our struggling for our freedom in the South. And blah, 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 blah. And I said, well, Dr. King, I really appreciate and respect what you're doing, and Judge Delaney and so forth and so forth. But, as I said to Judge Delaney, I simply can't. I can't go down and assist Judge Delaney in coordinating the legal research and the defense of your case. I simply can't do that. And so, he was crestfallen. So he asked me some questions about myself. And I said, well, I was an only child. My parents were domestic household servants. And when I was born, they didn't have a home of their own. I had to sleep in the servants' quarters where they lived, the place where they worked. And then when I was about 6 years old, my parents put me in a Catholic boarding school raised for indigent colored boys. And I was raised by Irish nuns from the age of 6 to 14. And then, then I graduated from high school and went on to college. And I, told them my mother died at the age of 52. She never saw me graduate from college or law school, never saw anything. I was fast-forwarding him and so forth. And he leaves. And my wife at the time says, what do you think you are doing is so important that you can't help this man that came all this time to help ask for your assistance? So I said, no, that's not true. What Judge Delaney told him about me, but he didn't come out to see me. He had a speaking engagement out here in Los Angeles. and a lot of other commitments, and then I got annoyed. I said, besides, just because some Negro preacher got his hand caught the cookie jar stealing, that ain't my problem, And so that was Friday night. Next morning, I got another call. This to Saturday morning. The voice on the end of the phone is dripping with saccharine sweet. Mr. Jones, yes, my name is Dora McDonald. I'm Dr. King's personal secretary. And Mr. Jones, he so enjoyed his visit with you and Mrs. Jones. He forgot to invite you to come hear him preach tomorrow, the next day, Sunday, at a Baptist church in Baldwin Hills. So I go to Baldwin Hills. Now, I had never heard Dr. King speak, never saw the man speak or anything. So the resident minister was Reverend H.B. Charles, at a large, big Baptist church right in the heart of the Baldwin Hills, the heart of the Negro bourgeoisie, And Dr. King, after he's introduced by the resident minister, gets up and says, brothers and sisters, he says, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, the text of my sermon today is the role and responsibility of the Negro professional to aid their less fortunate brothers and sisters who are struggling for their freedom in the South.
Oh, my God.
So I thought to myself, now this is one smart dude. He came to Beverly Hills. He came to Baldwin Hills. He came to the center of the black intelligentsia. Now, as I said, I never heard him speak, never saw him speak before. He spoke, never heard a human being with two legs and arms. He was mesmerizing. It was spellbinding. I never heard any human person speak like that before. In the middle of this, he was giving the church a description of what he was doing, of the movement. Then he pauses and he says, and for example, there's a young man sitting in this church this morning. My friends in New York, my lawyer friends in New York, they tell me this young man, a young lawyer, that his brains have been touched by Jesus. So I thought, I'm curious because I know that bears no rational relationship to me. They tell me that this young Negro lawyer, that when he goes into the law library and does any legal research on any problem, he goes all the way back to the time of 1066 and William the Conqueror, and the Magna Carta. And then my friends in New York tell me when this lawyer writes down what he finds, the words are so compelling, they just jump off the page. Now, that's when I started thinking, since that doesn't bear any rational relationship to me, I started thinking, when this church service is over, I'm going to find out who this dude is. Because if he's that good, I need to know him, right? And then he said, but I had a chance to meet this young lord the other night. He's home in Altadena, California. I said, oh, Lord, I wanted to sink down in the church pews so nobody would see me. And then Dr. King did something very unfair. There's a poem by the Negro poet and author Langston Hughes, an actual poem. Mm-hmm. The title of the poem is Life Ain't Been No Crystal Stair.
Right? Yes.
By Langston Hughes. You can go online, look at that, okay? Now, in the actual poem, Langston Hughes writes about this Negro domestic. She's scrubbing these staircase, somebody's house, and she pauses periodically. And she says, I'm doing this for you, son. She's speaking about her son. I'm doing this for you, son. Don't you give up. Life ain't been no crystal stair. So when Dr. King did that, I had a video picture of my mother in her, blue dress and white apron and all that. And I started crying in my seat because I had a picture of my mother as a domestic person. And so he said, now, his mother, he said something like, I don't think that his mother, what I told him, what I had learned about him, I'm not so sure his mother would be too proud of him. He has forgotten from whence he came. That's what he said.
Ooh.
I said, oh, Lord. He has forgotten from So I'm shook to the very foundations. I'm crying. I've been crying I was crying in my seat. Church service is over. Told you, very popular. So he's standing on the pulpit, standing on the chairs, the steps to the pulpit of this church. And as I go over to him near the pulpit, he says, "You know, I never mentioned your name, Mr. Jones. I never mentioned your name." As I got to him, he said, "Sometimes we Baptist preachers, I never mentioned your name." I just walked over to him. I didn't say a word to him. As soon as I got up to him, I grabbed his, I took my left hand. I can never forget this as long as I live. Took my left hand and grabbed his right arm and shoulder, pulled him to me, and I said, "Dr. King, when do you want me to go to Montgomery, Alabama?" And that's what I wrote in my book. I call it The Making of a Disciple. Now, let me just try to put the brother in perspective for you.
All true. Wow.
Okay? Let me just take one more second, one more sentence.
Wow.
In 12 years, listen to me now, listen to me. In 12 years and 4 months, from 1956 until April 4th, 1968, the date of his assassination, with the exception of the presidency of Abraham Lincoln and the Emancipation Proclamation of 1863, Martin Luther King Jr. may have done more to achieve political, social justice, equality, and rights under our Constitution than any other single person or event in the previous 240-plus year history of the United States of America.
Wow.
And put it in colloquial language, he was a bad dude. Okay?
Oh, wow.
Now he was a fearless. Fearless. I didn't say he wasn't afraid. He was fearless. The reason he was fearless because people forget he was a minister of the gospel.
Yes.
And he didn't believe that no man thing could protect him. Only his Lord Jesus Christ could protect him. He was fearless. Now, being fearless doesn't say he wasn't afraid. He was afraid, but he was fearless. All these people talking about they're going to do this to the man. They're going to do this. Well, please, I've seen fearlessness. I've seen courage. People talk about how they're going to do the man this. I said, well, I've seen pure, absolute, unadulterated courage.
We were
going and leading a march,
I know.
knowing you're going to have your head beat
right. Knowing that you might
by
die.
a police bully club.
Yeah.
Knowing that any given time you can be shot down.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And let me tell you something. In the last year of his life, I write about this. He knew he wasn't going to live long. The only question was how long.
Yeah.
Okay?
He knew
that he would be killed in some way. The only question, he just didn't know when. But he had reconciled that in his own soul and mind. Sometimes he'd joke about it in a macabre way. But he knew. Because he knew that only his Lord Jesus Christ could protect him, and when it was time for him to go home.
And what I want to say, Clarence, is that you were with them. You,
every step of the way.
Andy, right. all of you yes. are so, and that's what he's the symbol, he's the leader. But you got to have people to lead, and you were all with him, and that's what's so amazing to me. We show these videos here. We're watching Citizen King right now, and when the kids see it, they're like, "Man, I don't know if I could have done that." I think they could have had they been there, but you did it. Yeah. You did it, and it's just it will live forever.
So the question is,
will live forever.
The question is, how do we carry out his legacy?
Yeah.
and carry it out in an unsanitized form in dealing with the core of what he lost his life for. And I get down to the bottom line. He was concerned more than any other human being I knew about the least of these, the poor.
Yep. You, I just want to say, you've continued to. When I talk about authentic King, it's Clarence Jones, and the work you continue to do. You work at USF. You work at Stanford.
What can I do? I have no choice. I've been blessed with fortuitous longevity. What am I going to do? Sit around and not give every minute of my remaining life to this man whom I love so much? You know what I'm saying? I'm starting to cry talking to you. What you talking about? I've done so much. I ain't done nothing. I just was blessed to live beyond his 39 years.
Yes.
I haven't done anything.
Yes. I want the people in the studio are sitting here. Brianna's sitting there and watching her face. I want Larry. Do you want to say anything to him and get it to Mrs. Stell? You want to say something to Doc? I get to be with him a lot. It's amazing. Do you think he's got a million stories? I mean, going in Attica prison. I mean, he's got but they're all. This is the real deal. And
what do I try to do? I try to do as best I can because I keep repeating like a broken record. The homeless.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
His heart would break. He would break down and cry and sob like a baby when he knew what was going on with our young African American men. That's why I sound like a broken record. As long as I got every breath in my body. That's why I have such love and respect for you, Joe Marshall. Because you, too, are concerned about our young people. And you don't just talk about it. You've done something about it. You've dedicated your life to it.
Thank you, sir.
Okay? I know what you do. People, please. Don't be talking about me. You should be talking about people. You are the nearest thing of another disciple of Martin thing I can think of, because you are dealing with the people that he concerned about, young people. You dedicated your life to trying to save our young people, and I just am glad that I'm blessed to have met you, blessed to have been in your presence. Blessed to have you as a dear friend. And for those of you on the air, this is what we used to call Joe Mars is one of them serious, authentic Negroes.
All right.
Yeah, he's one of those serious, no nonsense, authentic Negroes. You understand?
Brother, look, Lynn, go get Brianna, you want to say something? Larry, you want to say something to Dr. Jones? Just listening to him is just.
How much time do we have?
We got 5 minutes.
You got a few minutes.
But,
okay. Well,
you want to go?
And I have not said, which is obvious, I don't have enough. I'm a pretty good wordsmith. I can write.
Yes, you can.
And
so I've heard.
I remember, Joe, when we met. I'm trying to show Joe how smart I am. And we were going over significant milestones in the history of African Americans in our country. And Joe said, "No, you left out something, Clarence. you know our history very well, but you left out 1980." I said, "Well, what happened in 1980 that I left out?" He said, "Crack cocaine." I said, "Lord have mercy." He said, that made a material difference in the condition of African Americans.
Yeah.
I'm talking about 1619, the Emancipation Proclamation, all this, and I'm going up the Civil Rights Movement. Oh, that's what he said, but you left out 1980, brother. Crack cocaine. And how prophetic.
And
Joe Marshall, you were.
Thank you, sir.
And are.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to give them a chance to say something. Go ahead, Larry and Bree.
I was just gonna ask if you saw yourself at the age of 25, what advice would you give yourself?
I would, under these circumstances, I'd want to master the most powerful means of communication, since that's what it's about. I'd want to develop a skill set of being able to have the tools to communicate, so that if I had a message, I'd at least want to have the ability to be on a level playing field, and being able to have the skills and capacity and knowledge to deal with just the skills of communication. Because that's where we are right now.
Bree?
Okay.
Thank you so much.
So with everything that's going on today with like dealing with police brutality and discrimination and racism, what do you think Dr. Martin Luther King would have done today to try to what have he had done today to kind of bring everybody together?
Today,
yeah,
is that he would pause and remind us about the nature and the nature and the structure of power in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And he would say that we can run all our mouths, we can write all the slogans we want, and yes, we must do marches, but at the end of the day, we want to change our condition, we have to vote. Voting is power.
I agree.
We've got to stop asking and begging the man to change change the system. Get the power to make the difference. Vote to make a difference. I mean, we don't have enough time, but if you go, it's not me. Other people have made an analysis. You know how this President Trump won the Electoral College because in certain states like Michigan and Pennsylvania, and I can't think of several of them right now, particularly critical states, the African-American vote was the lowest turnout that it had been in years.
Yep.
Ain't no sense in him getting the electoral votes of Michigan and Ohio and Pennsylvania. When you look and go behind it, what happened is that a reliable segment of voting with the Democratic Party, African Americans, they voted, but they voted at a lower percentage than they had voted at any other time before. That's why we have him as president.
Wow.
Okay.
It's funny because we started. We're actually right up at it. Man, I love talking to you. We sit and talk for hours. It's wonderful. It's fun. We started at this whole thing earlier with getting the disenfranchised, the formerly incarcerated, the right to vote.
Oh yeah, that's
another movement.
Please.
And it was.
Excuse me.
Yes, and
that's why the powers. They don't want.
Exactly.
They don't want the people who have served their time.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And have therefore redeemed themselves and paid the debt to the. They don't want them to be re-empowered again. They don't want them to be able to vote.
And it takes the same sort of movement that Dr. King did to get that back, and that's why we're so hopeful. And I just got to thank you, man. I asked you for a few minutes, and this is just let yourself say something. You got to say something.
All I have to say is,
you don't have to say anything.
How wonderful to hear your voice and to hear your story and your message. There are voices that we don't get to hear anymore, and whenever we are fortunate enough, blessed enough, to hear the voice that ties history with what's happening today, that is a gift, and a gift indeed. And I really appreciate hearing your voice. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.